Welcome back, folks. We have another amazing talk for you, and this one is from Shodipo Ayomide. Now, Shodipo is a media developer expert with Cloudinary, and he is based in Lagos, Nigeria. In this talk, he's going to be discussing how designers can get more involved with the open source software ecosystem in an effort to improve it for everybody. I hope you enjoy this talk, and I'll see you on the other side.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here doing this talk at FutureSync. Thanks so much for the organizers for inviting me and having me on board. Yeah, so I'm Shodipo Ayomide from Lagos, Nigeria. Lagos is quite a popular place in most countries, so I'm pretty sure you know of Lagos and interesting things in Lagos like the Lagos jollof rice and other amazing stuff here in Lagos. So I'm here to speak about design from the realm of open source. Yeah. So I have a friend called Adewale who made a quote at a conference in 2017 saying open source is the new source, like source, but then source, like sauce. Yeah. So it makes so much sense. And yeah, that's what I'm quoting right here. So let's move forward. So I do open source, so you can find me open source as developer IO on GitHub. I have projects here you can take a look at, and I still have more. You click on the repository so you can see more. And even recently, I started contributing to a project titled Use Stripe Cards, which helps you make it easier to checking out using Stripe. So yeah, that's the project, and just contributing to projects and creating new projects people can reuse. Let's move forward. So I do open source. If you look under here at organizations, you see the list of projects I've contributed to over time. So you can see companies like Facebook, Google, Netlify, GS Level Sites, Code Sandbox, Gatsby, and all of that. So they have projects that are open source, and I get to find one thing or the other that, okay, this is different and I can add to this. So I just contribute. So all these things are available on GitHub, and I just have to contribute to them when I see an issue opened. So let's move forward again. So I like to call myself a developer advocate and community evangelist because I do a lot of community work around Africa in whole, not just Nigeria. So in places like Nairobi, Mombasa, Uganda, Senegal, and other African countries that are out there. So I run communities like on Stack Africa, Africa Hacks, Developer Circle Lagos on Facebook, React.js Lagos, and Open Source Community Africa. So here are pictures of some of our events we've had this year. But okay, so the one by the left is the one. Oh, sorry about that. That wasn't supposed to happen. So yeah, as I was saying, the one by the left is from Niger Hacks last year, and it was one of the biggest. It's not even one of. It is the biggest hackathon in Africa right now, where we got over $100,000 in sponsorship to give out in so many ways to have people who registered and got in for this hackathon. And the one in the middle is the Unstack conference last year, and the one on the right is Open Source Community Africa, February this year. Let's move forward. So yes, I'm a media developer expert at Cloudinary and a technical instructor at Egghead. So that's sorry. So that's a little about me. Now let's get cooking. I'm really excited to get into this talk, and I'm sure you're excited too. Now, so designers can't get less creative. The more you produce design asset, the more creative you get over time. So designers can never get less creative. You might feel sometimes, I don't know what exactly I'm doing, but you get to a point where you just put things together, do some research, go on Dribble, go on Behance, and you get to see works that others have done, and you put all of them together. You are creating design assets. It's more like engineers here. If engineers are just building products, building applications as they learn, they are basically getting better. So if someone else, let's say a junior engineer comes to me asking, okay, I'm facing this problem, and I need a solution, I would know what to do. So as a designer, if someone else comes to me and says he's trying to achieve this in this design, but he can't. So because I have the experience and I'm more creative in some ways than him, so it's going to really work out for me in my way. So you don't get less creative at all. So what exactly is the problem with designers and open source? That's the thing we're going to be looking at a lot here and how to solve these problems. So let's get into the problems. So it's quite hard to find a single designer who contributes to open source efficiently. Contributing to open source as a designer starting out can be intimidating and confusing based on the level of features you see already prepared with no little or no documentation for designers. One of the problems that open source have these days is there is no documentation that is addressing designers at all. Every documentation out there is for engineers to understand how the platform works. And they don't really give the idea of, okay, probably a designer who haven't contributed to open source before wants to start contributing, like, okay, let me start with this project. So they go to the doc, like, okay, where do I start from? Like, uh, I'm confused. All these are codes and like no design related contribution document. So that alone gives them like, okay, probably I'm not wanted here and all of that. There are no features. There are nothing to guide them on where exactly to start from as designers. And that is one of the major problems we are having in the open source ecosystem with projects. So if you're creating an open source project, one major thing you should look at is creating a separate document or in that same README file, adding for designers, or you can name it, you can name the topic anything, then just write a little bit about if designers want to contribute, what exactly should they note and how exactly can they contribute. It's as simple as that. And it's as simple as just like putting that up and designers read it and they know what exactly to do in your project. Let's move forward. So another issue here is the ideology of designers are not needed in open source, but just make it work. So a lot of projects are out there don't really care so much about design. They just want to like, just make it work. As long as it works, it's fine. Everything is fine, but just make it work. Now that's very wrong. It should be beautiful. It should look great. It should be appealing to the eyes of the client. And these things are very important when building any product at all. So design is not an ideology. It's something that should be part of every project you're working on anytime, any day. So design should be number one. Not really. It should just be part of all the flow. You get what I'm trying to say? It should just be part of everything you're trying to do and should not be excluded. So if you're trying to build, let's say, a product, then you're like, okay, let me just like bring a whole team of engineers together, build a whole bunch of stuff, then just push it out there. Then just put regular designs, like just simple things, just button, design this should be here, just as simple as that. Then no designer to actually come and say, okay, the client will want this to flow this way and this to work this way, or when you click this, what should happen next? Designers would not be brought in to do that because they feel it's just an ideology and not a professional profession, and that's a problem. Yeah, but hopefully in times to come, this wouldn't be a problem anymore. Let's move forward. Now I bring to you the solution. Yeah, that's what I'm about to get up. I had to have this GIF because it's pretty slick. So yeah, I hope you love it. Let's move forward. So this is a solution that would help us reshape how designers see open source. So one major thing that one of the major solutions we should all be looking at in the open source ecosystem is resources. So having resources tailored towards how to contribute to open source as a designer. So we're having on GitHub. So okay, let's do this now. Thanks to companies like Open Source Design, Open Source Initiative, and other design companies creating design-related content and videos on the internet helps designers contribute to open source. So if you look at websites like Open Source Design, you get to see projects there and also documentations on how to get started with contributing to open source as a designer. Open Source Initiative also do this, and thanks to these companies, they are making it quite easier for everyone. But still, one of the major things that open source project needs to do is to have that little section for designers saying, if you're a designer, you want to contribute to this project, read this documentation and get started. However, okay, so the documentation can just be like, okay, first things first, go over to the issues tab. From there, look at the issues, see available node, and create an issue. After creating an issue, tag a few maintainers saying, okay, so this is the issue I have in my head. Can I make it work? Is this something that works? it's quite important to message the maintainers and authors first before proceeding with your project, even as a designer. Yeah, let's go to the next thing. Sorry. So I'm having a little bit of a cold, but I'm fine. So one of the major solution, again, after resources, is tools. So developers and companies need to create more tools to help aid designers contribute to open source. So we need a whole bunch of tools. Like same way as engineers, we have tools out there that helps us contribute to open source easily. So for example, we have Git. So being able to make changes on a project and just Git commit, commit the code, git push origin master, then that is going straight to the GitHub repo on GitHub. So makes everything super easy. You don't have to, like in those days that you have to, when you're working on a project, you just after making the changes, you just like zip, push, then they have to extract, drag, drop, and like do a whole lot of those stuff. Well, upon the introduction of Git, a lot of things have become easier. So having these developers being focused on designers and creating those tools to help designers contribute to open source easier is one thing that we really need to have. And also having these companies like Adobe creating these tools also and improving them as constantly, that would be awesome. So designers need to understand how to communicate with developers, and developers also need to understand how to communicate with designers. So this is one of the most important bridge in between the developers and the designers. So designers should, I'm not saying designers should learn how to code. No, it's not a priority, but they should know how to communicate with developers, because the only way. So, for example, if the developer cannot understand what you designed and you decide to tell him, and you're trying to tell him how it works, as a designer, he would be confused, because like it's going to be like, okay, but I still don't get you. I think you have to. So you just get that back and forth thing. But how to solve this problem again is by introducing developers on how to understand designers and how to speak to them as designers, and designers being able to speak to developers as developers using the developers' terms, not really learning how to code. No, that's not quite important, but just the communication is going to make things super easy for both teams. Let's move forward. So let's get started with open source software. So open source in a nutshell is a free software built by the community first. Now, so open source first is built by the community, everyone together, then for the community, for everyone, not secluded to one people, one race, but it's open to everyone, with improvements shared across different technical talents. So it's built by the community for the community, with different improvements shared across technical talents like documentation specialists, project managers, designers, developers, a whole bunch of other technical roles that are very important in the technical industry. So all this improvement shared across all these people, that is open source, not just saying, okay, it's just code. That's all we want. No designers, no documentation, nothing. Then I'm not sure that will be pretty much concerned or called open source, or it's just going to be like a project up there that no one can contribute to. But you expect people to understand when there's no documentation or when they're trying to use and they're quite confused. Let's move forward again. So the web has been open source since view page source. So since when Google Chrome introduced view page source and inspect element to Chrome, the web has been open source since then for designers and developers also. So you can be able to change things on the Chrome browser and see it reflects directly on the browser. Like literally, for example, you change a color and the inspect element, it's automatically gives you an output on the page itself. How can a designer begin contributing to open source? So the number one place to start out is the GitHub issues tab. That is the best way to start contributing to open source as a designer, not just looking at those open source projects, looking at the outputs on the browser, like, okay, I think this should be it, that should be this should be that. Then just like start contributing and just push. No, that's upside down, and you wouldn't get any approval for that. So the best way is to firstly go to the issues tab. That's the number one thing you should never forget. Next thing is evaluate a chosen project's workflow, how the workflow is as of right now, the client and usability, color combination, and every other related design components of this open source project. So in between the usage of the application to get into another point, how is the workflow like? How is the flow? Will it be appealing to different kinds of clients and different kinds of people? How easy is it? How easy is the software to use for the client? The color combination together, do they fit really well, or are they just there? So these are the things that should be considered and evaluated when you're trying to look at an open source project. So yes, never start a feature without consulting with one of the project authors or maintainers if it's a valid ad, or how can it be improved. So also, yeah, never start or never just push something out there as a pull request without speaking to the project maintainers or authors, because you might get things like, okay, sorry, unfortunately, this pull request has to be closed because we are already working on it and you never told us. Or you may get something like, we are not ready to start this feature right now, so probably we will close this for now and open it up later. But if you speak to the maintainers and authors before moving forward, you get to know if this feature is a valid one, and if it's something that the maintainers can also add to your idea, and see how we can all improve it together as a community. Because the goal of open source is collaboration for the community. Everyone and every technical talent coming together to make just one project that benefits the community itself. So yeah, coming up with alternative design patterns, but raising an issue in relation to why, how, and timeline. So these three things must be in your issue. So why you should create an alternative design pattern, and how all of that should work. So these are very important when contributing to open source. So why, how, and the timeline is going to take you to contribute to all of these things. So one other thing you could do if the project you're trying to contribute to is it's just a regular one and they hate designers. So what you can do to change their mind is prototype your design properly if you are contributing to OS projects. So if these guys hate design, okay, for example, I have a project called I Hate Design. So it's just code that does this major thing. Then I'm like, okay, I want to change this guy's mentality on how he thinks about design. So I'm going to redesign this. I'm going to create a prototype. I'm going to see how it works. I'm going to push it. Then send him a link. It's going to be, okay, hey, Chief, take a look at this prototype I made of your product. I'm not being paid to do this, but I'm just trying to contribute to open source with my time. So then you use them and it's like, oh, wow. So this is how it works. And it's so beautiful. Like, okay, let's do it. So having all of these things, prototyping is quite important, all of it. So prototype your products to show the maintainers on how exactly this product should work. So I'm going to mention like two crappy things a lot of designers say about, a lot of engineers rather say about design. So yeah, let's do this. So some designers say design is an ideology and not a professional profession. That is very wrong. So design is a professional profession, is a team thing, and there's a team. There's a team called the design team in every company, or in most companies, focused towards technology and more than technology. So it's quite important. Please don't say this. It's wrong. So design is the personality of your project. It needs to speak. So design should speak. Is the personality, is what people relate to in your project. So you can screenshot this and tweet about it, because let's tweet and let's share over on Twitter. You can tag me. My username is @developer_ayo, then the underscore. Then you can use a hashtag FutureSign20. Tweet this, tag me, and yeah. So design is a personality of your project. It needs to speak. If the end product is quality software, why can't designers code? Yeah, this is another thing I've heard countless number of times that is very wrong, and I believe we should improve. So if the end product is quality software, why can't designers code? Yeah, because they are designers and they are specifically designers. Even though it's then once they're done designing, they create a prototype and they share with the engineers. Then they explain and collaborate on how this can be implemented in production. Yeah. Sorry. So Design is one of the most significant departments while building a startup product or working on an open source project. So the design department should never be overlooked for any reason because it's highly significant if you really want your project to succeed in the market. So never overlook the design department, and yeah, never do that. So the web is open source and for designers contribute to since using the web inspector came out in Chrome, as I said earlier, which grants you access to live debugging design in CSS. So I'm going to show you a little bit about that. Then we're going to just return to the slide. Yeah, let's do that. So let's go over here. So what I have here is a simple project I just put together in less than 30 minutes. Yeah, like less than 30 minutes. So I have app.js, so just a very simple application here. Then very simple CSS. So what we're just gonna do is, let's start this. Let's run this and let's see the output in our browser. So processing. So yeah, this is something very simple, and so this is not even anything in relation to design. So this is just something very simple. I just want to show you things that pertains to the web inspector and inspecting an element. So we can say, okay, for example, name of a company, Cloudinary. Okay, that's something simple. Telnex. So Telnex, then click. Then this should just do something, but that's nothing right now. So but now, so right click, inspect. So you can see now this button, this is a button and it has a class called button, and the name of the button is click. So you can just call this push. This changed, but that's regular HTML, right? Now let's talk about styles. So go look a little bit, you can see something called styles. Then now this class is called buttons, then you see a button here called style, and it's saying light gray, and so that's the color I set it in my CSS. So if you come over here to CSS, index, right? Nope. Here, so you can see here, class name button, exactly the same thing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna call this red. See that? I'm gonna call this blue. Ouch. Why does that keep on happening? Yeah. So that changes. Then you can also close this, and yeah, it's still there. Just it's when you refresh that everything returns back because it's not permanent. It's just a simple tweak. So yeah, that's that. Let's go back to our slides. So version control design. So version control already have things for design. So design history, we have that already. Or something like Git for designers, being able to push design in between software and design tools. So if we can have designers being able to push code from Figma to XD to Sketch to all these design tools together, that would be very different from what any company has done. And if Figma, Sketch, and Adobe XD, because these are the most used design tools, can come together and collaborate, so they can be able to push design in between these tools together, that would revolutionize every single thing design in this industry. So you must always design for multiple devices and responsiveness when contributing to open source and prototyping if you really want to convince the people who own the project that you should really do this. This is majorly because some companies don't care about design, so you have to make them see why design is quite important in any project. Yes, start writing documentation for other designers to see and follow. Is a strength someone has to start. So write documentation, as I said earlier, there should just be that small block for designers. Okay, start this, do this first. After doing this, read this file, do all of these things. Just basically how designers can get started. So if someone didn't start because they believe someone else would, at the end, no one ends up starting until a couple of years later. So like one eternity later. I got that from like a SpongeBob meme. Yeah. So you can screenshot this and tweet also, and my handle is @developer.io. Oh, it has an underscore here, but I forgot to add that. So with an @developer.io, then an underscore, then hashtag also. So you can also tweet other part of these sessions. That would be fun to see on Twitter. I'll definitely like that once I see it and retweet. So let's talk about some tools you can use when contributing to open source. We're almost done here. So Figma, Adobe XD, and Sketch. So these are the three most design tools they use anywhere in the world. Anyone uses Figma, everyone uses Adobe XD, everyone uses Sketch. Yeah. So for prototyping and showing clients what you've done, you can use InVision Studio, Adobe XD, Origami Studio, Sketch, Webflow, Framer, or Zeppelin. Quite important tools. So for discussion and collaboration in between teams, so we're looking at Zeppelin, Slack, Figma, InVision. So very important to discuss the features I said earlier with the maintainers and authors, either on Zeppelin or Slack, InVision or Figma. It's quite important to discuss before you start, unless it wouldn't get approved. So resources are not openly distributed as it is today. Sorry about that, because it's blocking our slide. We're almost done. So I'm just gonna see how I can move this. So resources were not openly distributed as it is today, which we have people writing, creating content, running workshops, conference talks, writing research articles, lots more. Today is the best time to start contributing to open source as a designer, and I believe you should start right now by what? Going firstly to what do you call it again? GitHub.com. Yes, you should do that. Visit github.com. Write documentations, create articles, do a conference talk, write research articles, do all of these things that pertains to open source and help improve open source. So over here are some links about open source you can read on. So we have opensource.org, opensourcedesign.net, opensourceafrica.org, itsforce.com, that's free open source. Then we have open source Facebook, open source Google, open source Microsoft, and open source Twitter. So read up about all of these open source projects, and yeah, thanks so much for having me here, sir. If there are any questions, you can ask in the chats there. I'm gonna see them. I'm gonna respond. You can also ask and follow me on Twitter and GitHub at developer.io, then an underscore, just one underscore. So yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited that I got to be here. Thanks so much to Tony and the other organizers for having me. So thanks, guys. Bye.